Uh, we want to welcome to our program Dr. Michael Youssef, Senior Pastor of the Church of the Apostles in Atlanta. He is also the Bible teacher on Leading the Way, a international radio and television ministry, of course, heard each evening here on the American Family Radio Network and has been for, 20 years or something like that. The book Michael's got out is a new book. It's called Blindsided, subtitled The Radical Islamic Conquest. And he joins us, Dr. Youssef, now for the remainder of the segment. Michael, good morning to you.
Thank you, Tim and Ray. Good to be with you. I just was going to make one comment.
Please.
You know, the difference between now and 40 years ago, that we had some honorable people in the same party as the president, President Nixon, who were honorable enough to really stand up for the truth and not the party. But I doubt whether we have that climate today.
You mean the Republicans helped push Nixon out at the time?
Oh, there's no question. I mean, remember Senator Baker, famous question in the Senate, and he said, "What did the president know, and when did he know it?" And it was these honorable people who basically put the nation above their party. But you don't have that today. I just doubt that.
Well, it was interesting. Last night I was watching, I don't watch CNN a lot, but I was watching Piers Morgan just because I like his accent. And I was watching him. I flipped it over there, and he was interviewing Representative Elijah Cummings, who is a Democrat from Maryland, I believe. He's an African-American civil rights leader, but he's liberal on most issues. But even he and Piers Morgan were saying this abuse of the IRS and this tapping of these phone lines, but at least obtaining secretly the phone records of these reporters, even they were saying, and about Benghazi, the amending the talking points 12 times by the White House State Department. They said, even those guys who would be natural ideological partners with President Obama in the White House were saying this is wrong and something's got to be done. Now, what they do about it and what they mean by that, I don't know, Michael.
Yeah, well, it's a messy thing, and we have two things going for us. If honorable people within the Democratic Party would do what Senator Baker and others have done 40 years ago, and if you have the media finally wake up from their sleep, deep sleep, the drive-by shooting media, as Rush calls it, drive-by media. But if they wake up from slumber and they realize, look, the nation, the people are, we the people. That's America. That's not a dictatorship. It is not a ruler. We don't have a ruler. We don't have dictators. Until that time, we're probably going to be a little bit of fire, and then to go back to sleep again. But let's pray that God will bring the truth forward, because it's important.
Talk about your new book, Blindsided.
Yeah. Well, basically we got blindsided again. I mean, here we are. We're blindsided in September 11, and we said never again. And then just a few weeks ago, again in Boston, same thing happens. And before that, in Fort Hood, Texas, we got blindsided again. We had this guy who was against America in the Army, major in the Army, and he starts shooting and calling Allah Akbar. And we keep getting on being blindsided, and the reason for that is because we are refusing, which is the topic of this week's blog, by the way, we are refusing to acknowledge the fact that Islamic ideology, not Muslim people, but Islamic ideology is anti-West, anti-Christian, and they will keep doing this until they either get their caliphate or be destroyed.
What's a caliphate, for those who don't know?
Well, their aim, the depth of Islamic ideology, which seems to be succeeding now, it's succeeding in Libya, succeeding in Egypt, and it's going to be succeeding in Syria very soon, is to have a successor. The word caliphate means a successor, somebody who succeeds the prophet of Islam and dominate the Muslim world, and then empower them, because the second successor of the prophet, a guy named Omar, back in the 700s, not only succeeded him as a leader, but he also invaded Christian lands and took it over. All Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, all these were Christian lands, Egypt, North Africa, and invaded all the way to Spain. And that's what they want, a caliphate, a successor who would come and not only unite the Muslim world, but also begin to invade Europe and the United States of America so they can dominate the world.
Michael, I want to ask you a question about
Sure.
the so-called, the dichotomy between the so-called moderates. I mean, we all know there are millions of Muslims,
Yes.
particularly in America, who are, quote, moderate. And then we have the radicals, and it's often presented in the media as if Islam in its nature is basically moderate and peace-loving, and the radicals have just perverted it. But as I'm looking at your book and listening to you talk,
Yes.
I think it's really the opposite, isn't it? That
Yes.
that the religion itself is inherently radical.
Exactly. And there are few who are peace-loving, who are really westernized in many ways, who are saying we need to reinterpret Islam in the light of modern world. And those so-called moderates. But they really are people who want to reinterpret the whole religion. And, of course, the core ideology refusing them to do that. They say, no, it is Islam, the real Islam that we want, not radicalized Islam, but we want the real Islam. You know, when the Reformation took place 500 years ago, they said, out of the Dark Ages, we're going to go back to what Christ did, what Christ said, and his teaching, and they went back to the Scripture. And so the modern Wahhabi movement, which is their Reformation, says, let's go back to what the Prophet said and did. And the Prophet killed and maimed and invaded and overpowered his enemies, and therefore that's, everybody basically worshiped the role model. We worship Christ, who's the love, presented the love of God, and he died on a cross, and they want to follow their role model, who killed the enemies and maimed them and sold their wives into slavery and dominated and expanded.
Talking to Dr. Michael Youssef, our guest here on the program today, and the book he's written is called Blindsided, The Radical Islamic Conquest. And Michael writes blogs, and we carry them at onenewsnow.com. And if you're ever in Atlanta, you can come to your church. Sunday mornings there?
Yeah, we'd love to have you, 9 and 10:30.
Michael, your topic here, the radical Islamic conquest, and what happened in Boston with these two brothers. That was about as a strained attempt at explaining something away by the White House and some in the media, not all in the media. That is to say, we don't understand. I read an article the other day. Somebody was saying, the media saying these guys were self-radicalized. and the point of the article was, how do you self-radicalize? We're trying. Even the phrase terrorism is undefined. You wouldn't say of Adolf Hitler that he's just a bad guy doing evil things. No, you would say he's motivated by a view of the world, by Mein Kampf and the Aryan supremacy, and anti-Semitism and those kinds of. In other words, we don't take other groups of people in the world and say, who do terrible things, or people and don't identify their ideology as to why. But with Islamic terrorism, we don't want to. To do that, do you think part of that is Americans don't know how to? We don't like generalizations. Even you distinguished earlier in the program. You said, "I'm talking about Islamic ideology, not Muslims."
Exactly, and we must make that distinction, but not make a. But if you blur that distinction, you already made the point. When we said these are good Nazis, but these are bad Nazis, because how can he be a good Nazi and a bad Nazi? It's Nazism, and those people who were really even forced into it might not even like it, but they were part of it. So you got people who got Islamic ideology, and Mein Kampf, by the way, when you translate it into Arabic, it means jihad. It's my
I didn't
struggle.
know that. I did
my
not know
struggle.
that.
It's my jihad. I mean, it's just it's a literal translation, and that was his struggle. It's his jihad, and so we have the struggle now. That some few, and I want to be truthful about this, there are some few secular-minded Muslims who are saying, let's say struggle means that you are struggle against sin in your life. Well, that's a Christian concept according to the people I talk to within the Islamic ideology. They said, no. They want to try to make Islam look like Christianity, and we reject that. But struggle or jihad means we're going to, basically eliminate the enemies of Allah.
So just to be, to borrow from Richard Nixon, we've already used his name here, be perfectly clear, right? Wasn't he famous for saying that?
That's right.
To be perfectly clear, what we got going on here, Michael, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Quran, the holy book of Islam, expresses that teaches that the Muslim, the faithful, loyal Muslim, is to resist or attack, the infidel,
Right.
which is non-Muslims.
Yes.
And appropriate with that is even physical violence.
Right.
And so that's what the Quran teaches repeatedly. And so for those people who act out on that, the jihadists,
Yes.
they are only following what their holy scriptures tell them to do. And that's what Westerners, Americans, can't come to grips with, because we want to believe that all religions basically teach the same values, and what you're saying is no, they don't, and we need to admit it. Have I got that in a nutshell?
You got it exactly perfectly better than I could put it.
Well, they put my name on the book, and
okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
That's, if people just stop being lazy and just go and read the Quran for themselves, just go and read it, and it's there. It doesn't have to somebody like me or anybody else come and tell them what it says. You go and read it, because it's very clear. The admonition is there, and
what do you say to people though who say people defenders of Islam who say, what you guys that's metaphoric, things you're talking about, just like the Bible uses metaphors. So that's not a literal commandment to go out and slay the infidel. It's talking about something different.
Again, this has come from liberal Christians who believe the Bible is a metaphorical book. And they want to say the Quran is that makes the Muslims really mad. That makes them angry when they hear that. They actually rather deal with an honest Christian who says, look, here's Christianity, here's Islam, and they really appreciate. Look, I spent a lot of time with those guys in the early 80s. And
what guys?
The so-called radicals. And back when I was writing my PhD dissertation at Emory University, which was written on the radical Muslims, the so-called radicals, the jihadis, who killed Anwar Sadat. And when I went to interview them, and it's all in the book called A Revolt Against Modernity, which is a textbook in just about every university library in the world, published in Holland. I document it. It's not a matter of I am assuming or I'm trying to impute on them or trying to do this. I got their words and from their mouth and wrote it down. And they said, we hated when so many of these liberal Christians, and they know the difference, and try to paint us with their brush and make us look like Christians. And they said, we're not. We are Muslims, and that's what we believe, and we're not ashamed or embarrassed about it.
Yeah.
And that's what we really need to listen to very carefully. And still, I can love a person despite of the fact that he might want to kill me. I still love him because that's what I'm commanded to do. It has nothing to do with me trying to make him look nice so I can love him.
But now, Michael,
that is not a virtue.